Welcome to Sherlock Monthly. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we are going on a biblioventure through the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Today's episode is number 41, and it is the adventure of the Golden Pince-Nez. Not Pince-Nez, but you can say that, I'm sure. I know I said it my entire, younger life. And joining us for the first episode of this new season are a couple of new co-hosts, Maria Fleishhack and Jessica Fliss. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
I love having new faces on here and new Sherlockian minds to go, through these stories. This will be a lot of fun, everyone. And this is a new season. We began in 2023 as a weekly program, Sherlock Mondays, in which we deduced, deciphered, and dissected Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes adventures in a kind of conversational annotation in the order the stories were originally published, and we're continuing that. You can see all those episodes on the Rosenbach's YouTube channel, including now the special subscription only series we did with the Hound of the Baskervilles. That was previously only available for people who had watched who had paid for it, but now we have made it available for everyone to watch for free. And there's a link in the chat for it for you to find that. Also, you'll find all of the past episodes from Sherlock Mondays and Sherlock Monthly on our YouTube channel. And I would also ask you all to please consider making a donation to the Rosenbach, or you could become a member. You can do this at our website, rosenbach.org. Your support helps us continue to create programs like this for free for people, to also care for our collections, including our great, our growing Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes collection. We now have a sign of 4 in the Lippincott's magazine first issue in our collection, which is really nice to have. It will be on display in our Treasures Gallery coming this fall. And Sherlock Monthly is also brought to you by the generous support of Lisa Washington. Lisa, thank you so much. She's been sponsoring every season that we've done, but also new Belanger Books. Our friends Derek and Brian Belanger are new sponsors of this season's Sherlock Monthly, and I will talk a little more about Belanger Books at the mid-break today. But right now, because we're waiting, and you're waiting on camera, thank you, Jessica and Maria. I have the spiel to get through first. Let me introduce my co-hosts for today. Dr. Maria Fleishhack is a lecturer for English literature at Leipzig University in Germany and currently works on a project focusing on concepts of authorship and readership in the age of the internet. She is a member of the all-female Sherlock Holmes-centric podcast, The Baker Street Babes, and honorary president of the German Inklings Society, which I didn't rhyme. So that's, behind me too. And I've got my green dragon mug today for a beer. She has also co-edited The One Fixed Point in a Changing Age, A New Generation on Sherlock Holmes, and edited Femme Friday, celebrating the women in the Sherlock Holmes canon and transformative works. She's had contributions published in the Baker Street Journal, the BSI Manuscript series, the Proceedings of the Sherlock Holmes and the British Empire BSI Conference, as well as the Essential Sherlock Holmes Volume 2. Jessica Fliss is an environmental scientist, a writer, wife, a baseball mom, which I loved hearing the stories about, and 30 years Sherlockian. The first words she ever spoke to her husband were, "Do you actually like Sherlock Holmes, or are you just wearing that shirt?" We're going to hear that story in a moment. She's a member of the illustrious Clients of Indianapolis and has contributed to the Essential Sherlock Holmes Volume 2 as well. Her current Sherlockian interest is the use of fashion cues within the canon to provide context to the chronology debate. I wonder if we can do that with this story as well, especially with the Pince-Nez. I'm not sure. Alrighty. Maria and Jessica, thank you guys for coming to the show finally.
Oh, thank you for inviting us.
And Jessica, let's start with you. That story about, meeting your husband. over Sherlock Holmes, but also in general, do you have a Sherlockian origin story?
Actually, I sort of do. My mom was a Sherlockian, and she got me into Sherlock Holmes through the Brett Granada series. My parents are divorced and have been divorced since I was really young, and my mother lives in Florida. So I would have to go to Florida to visit her. And when I would visit, she would always, give me whatever new show it is that she was watching. And one trip, it was the Granada series. And she's like, Jessica, you have to sit down with me and watch this. It's amazing. And I said, okay. And I said, well, what is it? And she goes, it's Sherlock Holmes. And my brain just sort of stuttered because, I'm a preteen. I'm a preteen girl. And I'm like, mother, come on, really? Even though I know better because she's the one who got me into pretty much everything I've been into in my life, right? And she showed it to me and I was hooked immediately. So all I did was watch the Granada series that summer and then immediately got to my school library when I came home and went back to school and just pulled a double volume of all of the canon and just read it nonstop to the point where I got in trouble in class for reading stories under my desk like this. And I would look up and my teacher would be staring at me and he was really unhappy.
That's great. I can't remember if I was like I either, I mean, I was aware of Holmes and had read something, but I don't know if my origin begins with watching Brett and then reading them or
Hmm.
reading them and watching Brett. So because
Right.
they were still they were still being aired when I started those, in
Hmm.
the 80s. So yeah. And so so then you met someone in college.
Yes. So, I had moved into the residence hall in college. I was a sophomore. I had lived at home my first year. And because I was a sophomore, I moved into the residence hall that was for transfer students. So I was walking down the hallway, and in front of me, I saw this guy wearing a sweatshirt, and you could get this shirt everywhere. I had a t-shirt and a sweatshirt version. It has the Paget Moriarty on the back with a bunch of quotes, and then it has the Paget Silver Blaze illustration on the front, and it says Sherlock Holmes really big, and then underneath, once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, etc. And I could see it down the hallway. And I saw this guy, and I had no idea who he was. I had only been in the residence hall for a couple of weeks at that point, so I was still finding my way. And for some reason, I ran down the hallway like at a sprint and grabbed him by the arm and said, do you really like Sherlock Holmes or are you just wearing that shirt? Like he was making some kind of fashion statement. And he says, no, I really like Sherlock Holmes. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have to see this. And he was right outside my door of my room. So I throw the door open and I was like, look. And then on the shelf was all of my Holmes collection, all of my little bits and pieces, all of my, my little Persian slipper and my, my gasogene and my pipe and all the things in my books. And he was like, oh my gosh. And so he went upstairs and got me his 1914 version of the adventures that he had brought to school. And
Wow.
we're still married to this day.
I love that. Someone's either gonna run when they see all
Right?
that stuff, or or or
Yeah,
go get their part. Like, look,
exactly.
that's awesome. All
Mhm.
right. Uh, Maria,
Yes.
do you have an origin story for Sherlock Holmes?
It's a little less straightforward. One is that Sherlock Holmes always meant something to me as a child. And I've told this story many times before, but it's a very German thing because we have a local band, like a very pop, like a cappella band, and they had a song about sort of the good in humanity and good people, and they named a few names, and one of those names is Sherlock Holmes because he always fights for the good in the world. So for me as a child, that was always obvious, right, that Sherlock Holmes must be a good person. But I didn't really read any of the stories when I was young and didn't really watch a lot of it. I think the first Holmes at all that I watched was Without a Clue, which isn't Holmes at all, right? But so in terms of that, it really took until I was in university to read the stories, because then I started taking a class on Doyle in psychology. That was my second semester. So that was more Doyle centric and not necessarily Sherlock Holmes centric. But then I took a class on detective fiction and kind of the coding, right? So in terms of sort of what kind of elements are repetitive, so the narrative aspects of it. And that was kind of when I became interested. And then I really fell into kind of the fandom of things with the Guy Ritchie Holmes, and then not much later, the BBC series. And then I really kind of entered, fandom spaces and found other people that were into Sherlock Holmes, and then kind of expanded from there. So that's kind of my story. So a little bit more patchy, but I do remember watching the Soviet Russia, the Soviet Sherlock Holmes, because it was broadcast both in Western and Eastern Germany at the same time. So that was, I think, the one single television series that both Germanies had at the time when the GDR still existed.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I have kind of vague memories of that being on, but I also remember that I really acknowledged it for the first time, and how fun and how kind of loving it is with the canon. When again my former boss showed it to us in a class on Sherlock Holmes, so kind of brought out the VHS tape and then we watched it with English subtitles.
Did you read it? Did you read Sherlock first in German or English?
No, I actually never read. I mean, I read some bits because I wrote a book, like an introduction into Sherlock Holmes, so I had to read some of the stories, obviously. But the stories to me are written in English, so I haven't really looked at the German translations. Yeah.
And you've done work with the Baker Street Babes too. Are they still operating? They still doing things?
Oh, well.
Is it just here and there, or
yeah, kind of. That's a very good question. I think part of it was the pandemic just kind of made everything stop. And even though that would have been like the ideal, place to kind of pick up again, all of us were just kind of exhausted and like job issues, and it just kind of means that also a lot of us kind of were still getting education when we started, right? I was doing my PhD, other people were still in college, and all of that, we kind of like outgrew being able to have that much time and being able to, come together all the time. So it kind of fizzled out in some sense. I mean, we still exist, but obviously in kind of no capacity where we like meet regularly and record podcasts anymore. It's more like an online presence, and we as people are still very close friends, but we don't create much content anymore. Yeah.
The chat is kind of quiet today. You guys can feel free to chat as much as you'd like there. And that would be, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to hit them if I see them. And let us thank you. I'm sorry. I was like
You're multitasking.
and then I noticed that I was looking in the chat for see if anybody had any questions, and I couldn't find any. And I wonder if it's lagging. No, I guess we're good. All righty. Well, there is a manuscript for this story that exists, as you guys probably know too, and it's at the Harry Ransom Center down in Texas, and we have it's a lot, and it's kind of like the one that we have at the Roosevelt. We have the Empty House manuscript because it's one of those manuscripts that was bound in vellum by Doyle himself. He did about 10 of his manuscripts. I think most of the Return series, or maybe all of the Return of Sherlock Holmes series that he was writing, he had bound, in his words, so as to be ready for the capricious millionaire whom we all hope for and never see. And then he donated most of them to, charities to be auctioned, and gave them away. This one he gives away as a gift. And then even when they did sell in auctions, they sold in the tens of pounds is what they sold for originally.
It's beautiful. And then Glenn Moranger came on, and then we found the guy to buy that.
Yeah. And then everything changed. We have Dr. Rosenbach too, buying and selling all of these rare items. This is the cover of it here. Where am I at? Here it is. This is the cover, and it's these, vellum boards, and there you go. You can see my application, right? What is my? Yeah, okay. You can see that, right?
A survivor of 20 years of collaboration. Nice.
I am having some issues here with my share. There we go.
There you go.
Let me try that again. Sorry, everything blacked for me. Well, that's it. That's what I'm seeing. And yeah, it was he had bound them, and then he had originally signed it up here. Sherlock Holmes, original manuscript, Arthur Conan Doyle, and then the rest of this. Then he added this later. It's not as quite evident here. You have to really look hard in this image to notice, but the ink is a little sharper for the rest of this. And then he put from Arthur Conan Doyle to H. Greenhouse Smith, a souvenir of 20 years of collaboration, February 8, 16. Greenhouse Smith was his editor at the Strand, and had for many years, saw his stories through to the uh, to publication. And Greenhoff Smith himself wore pince-nez glasses, so perhaps that was the reason for the connection for this one. Doyle had the whole thing bound up in the exercise book that he wrote it in. And there are several of his stories. The one at the Rosenbach at the empty house is just like this. He did them in these Paragon exercise books and even wrote his name on the cover, written by A. Conan Doyle, Undershaw, Hindhead. And then he added these title pages in when he had them bound. And here it is in this gorgeous, handwriting from Conan Doyle. It's just really beautiful handwriting, and writes continuously. Most of the manuscript is likely you'll see a correction here and there, but he sits down, he has his story in his head, and he writes it out. He is thought it's he can see it and hear it in his mind, I think, in a sense, and then just puts it on the page very smoothly. Not a process of drafting and redrafting. And here you can see he's written when Stanley Hopkins comes in. He's got him here. It was a young Stanley Hopkins, a promising detective. And then later, though, he has left blanks and filled Hopkins' name in later. You can tell the ink is different, and there's a little more spacing here. Here as well. And it's really obvious here where there's a whole space right here. Hello, Hopkins. That he's forgotten his name as he's writing the story. And so instead of going back and looking it up, because I'm busy writing these lines out, he just leaves a blank and knows that I'll fill the name in later. And we know that because earlier in the story, for a couple pages, the name is not written in later. It is written as he was first writing it. So he did come up with the name in the beginning. But I find that fascinating about this manuscript, those little things that give you a kind of window into the way he writes, so to speak.
And it's kind of funny because it's clearly a detective that he likes, which doesn't happen a lot in the Holmes stories, right? So he needed to stick to the new guy he invented. So Holmes will actually be kind of a supporter of him and very kind in comparison to others. So it's kind of cute.
they and so he's done this for a few of his things, bound them up really nicely, and then they wound up on the market, and this one did, and it was in a couple different collections, and then finally made it its way to the ransom center where it is kept well. So it's a great place for manuscripts and books. Someone's wondering if there's any manuscripts on display in the UK. I'm not sure what's in the UK, but if you go to Best of Sherlock, that ran the site that Randall Stock has online, he has a complete, as much as we know of where every Doyle manuscript is, and certainly where every Sherlock Holmes manuscript is. So if you go to Best of Sherlock online, you could find that out. Most of my information when I look up manuscript things, or I get from Randall Stock anyway. So he has done all this research and all the facsimile series that the Baker Street Baker Street Journal publishes. They're all Randall Scott. He's got an essay in every one about the manuscript. So, all righty. Well, have you guys ever handled a Holmes manuscript, Maria or Jessica?
I have not touched one. I've looked at them.
Yeah, I've seen them
glass.
in
Yes,
person, but I've never actually could touch it. It was always behind glass.
Well, we'll have to get you to the Rosenbach one of these days. Put the empty house in your hands. So the Rosenbach's collections are open to anyone to come research. You don't have to be some extraordinary, scholar like Maria. Anybody can come and set an appointment to come to the reading room, and we will bring the materials out, and you can look at them.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
even touch them. So if they're touchable, there's some stuff that's so fragile that it needs special care, but
right.
So all righty. This story is first published in Strand Magazine in July 1904. But Collier's, the American edition, paused. They paused for the summer and didn't publish anything July, August, and then they didn't bring this out and September. Didn't bring out this story until October. I think they were looking to make sure they ran them through the December issue, which is the big Christmas issue. But the Strand just ran them until they were done running all the ones that he had given them. Let me share the Strand images. Maybe this will share easier for me. I think there's a new share feature with Zoom, and it's not showing me anything except, what you see here. But it blinds me out on everything else. There's the cover of the Strand. And you notice in the top there, it's the normal Strand cover that everybody, that became iconic, and the reason why they kept it the same color and the same picture for so long, that everyone would recognize it. But Sherlock gets top billing in the top here, in the top left, but right under is Sarah Bernhardt. We had seen this in the previous stories leading up to this. They had been running her memoirs, and everybody was interested in reading Sarah Bernhardt's memoirs, or at least reading only for the racy stuff.
I was gonna say they probably wanted all of the dirt that they could get.
But in this issue is also the first authentic portrait of Marie Corelli, and Marie Corelli, for those who might not know, was an extraordinarily popular author, like massively popular. At one point, she was the most popular author, biggest seller of anyone, but probably more in the 1890s. And now, but still, now, even this is 1904, she's still, selling so much. And but she was also very secretive. She didn't like pictures of herself to appear in public. And then it's not that hard to prevent photos of yourself. You have to pose for a photograph and stay still for a while while it's taken. So it's not that hard to avoid people taking photographs of her. But there was even one point where postcards were put out on the market that were just illustrations of Marie Corelli in a sled and Marie Corelli doing this, and she sued them.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Like you can't put images of me out there. She didn't want her image to be seen by people. And
Amazing.
so that there was an image like, wow, like here it's going to be. Actually, it's not true. The Strand had actually published an image of her in 1898. Um, and it is, but it wasn't a formal portrait. Um, it was um, it was a picture of her sitting in a room. Where the heck is it? Sorry. Here it is. Um, and it was an interview they did with her, and these illustrated interviews. And this is in
Oh.
1898. And there she
Okay.
is sitting here on the right with someone else. I don't know who it is. But this is her pet dog, Czar. The dog's name was, of course, this tiny little yapping, probably dog was named Czar. And in the lounge at the Royal.
Ooh.
Miss Corelli is the right-hand figure. So they actually had published this in 1898, but this was not a formal portrait of her, which is what they were saying they had now. And this is the formal portrait that they published. Very, dramatic.
Oh my
I
goodness.
can't, and I'm pretty sure it's her hair, but it does look like it's a laurel
Mhm.
Hmm.
encircling her head. Whoops, encircling her head there. Um,
For a woman who doesn't ever want her portrait taken, that is a very dramatic way of
yes.
just finally saying, you know what? You want a picture? There you go. Everything you ever wanted, the most dramatic version of me possible.
And they have the first published authentic photograph taken in April. So they're even letting you know, like, this is up to like this was 2 months ago. It's copyrighted, of course. She's going to make sure that she, withholds this kind of thing. And it's weird because if you put your hand over the head, you would think that the back is the front. Uh,
Hmm.
the way the arm sweeps down and the V there, it almost looks like she's wearing that backwards or some exorcist kind of thing has happened here and her head is spinning. Um, but um, but there it is. And then she did publish in her next book coming out. She published. There's a frontispiece with an image of her, which I don't have to show. You can find it online. Um,
Funny.
and she got a lot of criticism for it because it was clearly doctored. Like she
Oh.
had a photo and then she completely
Mhm.
changed the way she looked in it.
Mm.
Which is normal practice for magazine publishing
I was gonna
publishing
say,
these
do we
things
not still do
nowadays.
that now?
But then people were a little disappointed. They wanted to see, her as the camera took her. But um, so this one, and I don't this this is a real anomaly. I don't understand why they were saying it was the first. Well, I know why they were saying it was the first one because they wanted people to buy the magazine. Um,
Hmm.
and nobody's going to remember 6 years ago we had this little picture of her in the author's interview series. So there she is. The Collier's magazine came out a little later in the year with this story, and these have the Frederick Dorr Steele illustrations, which are absolutely fabulous, and especially
Mm.
for this story here too. I really like these. Um, this is the cover where Sherlock looking his dressing gown, um, looking through the pince-nez. There's all his laboratory apparatus is behind him here at Baker Street.
It's
And
one of
this
my
is,
favorite covers that
yeah,
Steele ever did, honestly.
yeah, this is October 29, 1904. And then all the stories were illustrated as well. And they always have a backdrop for the title.
I
Um,
love it.
the
Hmm.
heading, the title head here, and this one, it's that dark and stormy night that the
Yep.
that the story begins with. Um, gives it a very kind of gothic feel to it. And right here at the initial letter, like they do a little pince-nez there, which we'll look at later.
Fun.
A real pair in a little while when we get to that in the story. And I love the lighting on this first illustration
Yes.
too. This kind of, as if I guess it's coming out from the fireplace here because it's late at night and they're standing around in the room with Hopkins and Holmes and Watson.
Yeah, they'd all been sitting around reading until Hopkins came. I think they were getting ready to go up and must have started turning off the lights.
Here's the Coram that we'll look at later, but as always, I love looking at the advertisements here. Now, here's the Sherlock Holmes and the Sleepless Watchman. We'll get to that in a minute. Uh, because like, how can you? I mean, you said this to me, especially Maria, that seeing these ads, Sexology Illustrated. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I want that. Look at the publisher. Do you see the publisher on that?
Fantastic.
Puritan
Mhm.
Publishing Company in
Publishing company.
Philadelphia, of course. But
Everything you need to know.
I don't like, is this, I mean, do you think that they're like, yeah, we want people to buy this because it says sexology and, that kind of, it's their way of selling racy material, or is it really genuine? Um,
Yes,
is
I
it,
mean it must be like this rule book of like you're not allowed to masturbate because you will be sick and then die. I feel
Well,
like this
yeah,
is one of those books because
it
it
is
like it says
because,
something about like the children's
yep.
health and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I'm sure it's like that's the selling point, but what it actually is like the most Puritan, you know, just
Oh,
pray and work and don't do anything except like maybe make babies, but don't enjoy it. Um,
oh, or there's probably a lot of language in there about the duty of a wife, you
oh yeah.
know,
Mm.
multiple times, whenever he asks and things like that. So it's probably a lot of,
I mean, there's clearly a market for this in that, people don't know a lot of information
Yeah.
because
mhm.
they wouldn't be taught it in any way. And so this could be a useful thing, but he's clearly, 100 page illustrated catalog.
Yeah.
So enlarged and illustrated. So there's
I
clearly
might
that
have to
going
find
on
it.
if, there's going
If
to
there's a
be
copy out there, would
there's
love to
going to
see if
be
I can find it.
pictures, people. So, yeah, I didn't look it up if there were anything in there. Did you guys find any advertisements in here? See any that you would interested in?
Well, I
Oh,
love that. I'm sorry, Matt.
no, please go ahead.
Um, so what I love is I think it's on the last page, where you almost like you have to really look for the story because everything is just like increasingly covered in advertisement. Um, it's the hydrozone sore throat thing, which
Hmm.
is hydrogen peroxide. And on the
Oh,
bottle it says 30%. Like that will kill
wow.
you. Yeah, on the yeah, down there. Like
What?
I
Oh
I
gosh,
guess that's I
there it
guess
is.
that's what you take against a sore
Oh my
throat.
goodness.
A harmless antiseptic.
Oh my
Uh-huh.
goodness.
Uh-huh.
Are you supposed to gargle it?
I am
I
not
would
sure.
think.
I looked at the bottles and it says 30% on it.
Hmm.
So it must have like I don't know what they were doing. I mean that like at 30% it burns you. I think nowadays if you use it for like dental injuries,
Hmm.
it's like a 0.3 or something percentage that you get, like a
Yeah.
dilution of it. Like this would have, I don't know what they were doing, but this was fascinating that they were selling it like super, harmless.
Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
there is an actual Instagram account that's what they do. They call it Victorian bad ideas. And so they will talk about and find a replica or create a replica of a patent medicine or other kind of treatment. And then they will tell you exactly what was in the thing and tell you how you were supposed to use it. And they're like, this was a bad idea. And just the sheer volume of patent medications that could kill you outright.
Mhm.
Like it's no wonder the United States created the Food and Drug Administration. We had to. Everybody was dying.
Incredible. It's incredible. Yeah, also the
But
health underwear, like on the
mhm.
last page, I was wrong about this, but on the very last page, there's health underwear,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
whatever that is. Um, Yeah.
What I found was really interesting was just how many advertisements there were for learning to do things.
Hmm.
Correspondence courses, writing
Yeah.
advertisements, learn how to copyright, learn how to
Hmm.
take dictation, learn how to do shorthand, learn how to do all of these things. And you would write in and they would send you a course by mail, and then you could say that you were trained or learned how to do these. And for a lot of people, that was probably one of the easiest ways to have education brought directly to them, especially if they're working or they're busy and they've got other things going on, that they could actually do correspondence courses.
Yeah.
I was surprised how many of them there were in there.
And
Well,
always, oh, sorry.
you can not only educate yourself, you can educate your feet here. This is the Rice and Hutchins Educator Shoe. Um,
No, but
Nice.
I was also thinking that what is interesting as well is that it's not just the education aspect of it, but the fact that there's like a promise for money. Now, whether that's true or not is a different story, but it's
Right.
sort of education with already like the goal of employability in mind.
Mhm.
And that is something quite impressive. So I feel like that was that was better days in terms of
Right.
like AI, and like now half of these ads would be replaced by, well, Copilot will do it for you, ChatGPT will do it for you.
Right.
But this is really kind of targeting people who might have a talent, who might not be able to employ it, and to get an education for free most of the time, and then actually have a promise of perhaps
Mhm.
being illustrators for the magazine or something. So it's kind
Right.
of like the magazine itself kind of tries to get people, it's like an advertisement
yeah.
for workers essentially. Yeah.
Mhm.
My favorite is Hunter Baltimore Rye, but only because it leads with for family use.
It's
In
like the
case of
back to
sudden
school.
emergency, wherein a
Oh,
sudden
beautiful.
stimulant is most needed. Now, I think they're being a little jokey there, but
Probably.
but it is true that quick bring the brandy
Right.
is the cure.
Everybody.
So, and it's particularly recommended to women because of its age and excellence. There you
Oh,
go.
Right.
nice.
So,
Right. I mean, it's
ladies,
Watson's first choice.
ladies, you can drink the whiskey too.
I like the one underneath with the suspender, the
Mhm.
guarantee.
The
And it's like
guarantee.
President suspenders, the safest to buy. And I suppose they mean like, so your pants don't fall down. And we promise
We
that it would be the
guarantee.
safest for you to use.
All righty. Well, advertisements are always wonderful to look in these things, and
Mm.
I can never pass them up. I've had people come in and look at old issues at the Rosenbach of the old serial issues of Dickens's works, and
Oh,
no matter the serious scholar or what they're really looking for, everybody just stops and has to look through all
Yeah.
the advertisements.
I
It
mean,
is
who
such a
who doesn't want
perfect
diamonds
window.
by mail? I
Yeah.
mean, they were selling diamonds by mail. You just had to send them $10 and they would send you a genuine flawless diamond ring. And of course, it was perfect, because if it wasn't perfect, then they would give you your money back. Guaranteed. Absolutely.
It is such a window into the kind of world that you're looking at. Um, well, the and Sherlock Holmes is in here, and I said I would come back to it. There were advertisements in the last story we did, and you can watch the last episode on the Three Students when we talk about this. This was the ad in the last issue. It was a sleepless watchman. Sherlock Holmes says the prevention of theft is infinitely better and cheaper than its detection and punishment. Oh, he never said that, but that's okay because they put it in the advertisement here, and and it's about their the lock system that they have to keep things safe. It's a safe. It's a big old safe with a timer, kind of thing on it, and it's really nice. Well, they went one better in this issue now, and here it is Sherlock Holmes and the Sleepless Watchman with an illustration from Frederick Doore Steele.
Oh, okay.
And this was taken from the Solitary Cyclist, is it? Yeah, it was an illustration for the Solitary Cyclist from 1903. And they had pulled this out and put it on there. But even more than that, it's a story.
hmm
Mm.
It's Sherlock and Watson telling a story talking about a burglary and how this thing, this, Sleepless Watchman system, save the day. So it's a pastiche advertisement,
Mhm.
which I absolutely love the idea. And they even like name check other stories. You will remember the League of the Red-Headed Men. So you get a pastiche advertisement now running in these sections. Now, I don't know if Doyle was aware of this at all, because there was a later letter, a letter in 1916. So another 12 years later, when he sent a letter to Greenhoff Smith, and the letter reads, my dear Smith, I think I could sustain my copyright in the words Sherlock Holmes. And
Mm.
I don't think they have been used as an advertisement up to now. Well, sorry, Arthur, if they had been. Um,
Yep.
I look on the proposal as a purely business one without any sentiment, and have asked Watt to chat it over with you. At first sight, it looks to me like a matter which should concern the Black Cat and me. I guess this was a company that was trying to use it, the Black Cat, whereas you merely handle your own advertisement, being in the Strand. But no doubt you will express your view to Watt. The picture would never do. Holmes must preserve his dignity. He looks about 5 feet high, badly dressed, and with no brains or character. An actor out of a job. So whatever picture they had advertised, he hated. And but that was in 1916, and I
Mhm.
guess he didn't realize this has already been going on, and which also means that he wasn't getting paid.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
and especially using the Frederick Dorr illustration on this one, if this isn't, it's even Collier's magazine working with their advertisers to put something together, uh,
Hmm.
not thinking that it is copyright infringement. I mean, it's their illustration that they used for a story. And the whole idea of copyright and trademark and everything is getting really, it's all forming at this, early
Mm.
20th century. So it may have been perfectly legal for them to write that pastiche and publish that and say Sherlock Holmes recommends this. I'm not
Right.
100% sure where it falls. They certainly couldn't publish his story that he has a copyright for, but can
Mhm.
they do this? I'm not sure it's known yet then how legal or illegal it is.
Mhm.
Well, I hope the Sleepless Watchman sold lots of little safes for them.
I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a little safe or was a door lock. I think they were intended to be door locks because you could actually take a key and either you could have a key of your own and every other person that had access had their own specific key and you could
Oh.
get a record of everybody who locked and unlocked the door and whether or not like whose key was used and if a skeleton key was used. So
Yeah.
there was always a record of everybody who came in and out and locked and unlocked a door and with what key. So it was actually kind of clever, and I thought it was interesting that they
Oh
actually
yeah,
had something like that.
that picture is just the
Yeah,
little
it's
lock
like the
device
little
that goes
locking
into the door.
mechanism, and I would
I see.
love to know how that worked. I just think it's really
Mhm.
cool to be small enough to fit on a door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting.
All righty. Well, it's already 2:44. Let's get on with this story.
I
I don't know I don't know what time it is for Maria. Um, but at
It's
least
just
it's not
before
late.
9 p.m. It's fine.
It's not late at night.
was say this is
No, no,
early for
no, no.
Maria. She's good.
Yeah.
All righty. The I had made a mis- I had sent first I had sent the initial email I sent out for this episode. I had like this. I told it led with the line like, "Old Professor Coram has been found dead with his throat cut." Blah blah blah, and people immediately start saying, "Ed, what are you talking about?" I was like, "Oh my God, no!" So I had to change the email to and then I still had a mistake in that, and I had to change it again, but I didn't say nobody said anything of the second mistake. So I promise not to be as, mistake prone in the future. So I had read the story. So um as we'll find out. Maybe I didn't. The This story's frequently ranked like really low that people
Mm,
don't like it. And I don't know. I liked it maybe because I knew that. And going back on this reread, I found a lot in it that I really enjoyed about it. And
mm,
especially towards the end, Holmes's method here with the ashes, I thought was really clever. Yeah, I know it's been done in the past in stories and things, but it seems so clever in this instance and really worked well. So let us start taking a look at this story. Um, when I look at the three massive manuscript volumes which contain our work for the year 1894. So wow, that many cases in
Yeah.
1894? I mean, for chronologists out there, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, wait a minute. But you know, I wonder if a chronologist has ever is there a bigger year than any others? Um,
I
uh,
mean, 1895
Hmm.
is the biggest.
is it?
Right,
No.
1895 is like the year.
Yes.
But I guess, some of the cases kind of started a year before.
Hmm.
So it kind of makes sense. Also, it makes sense that Doyle was paid a lot of money to write this short story collection. So I guess he
Right.
wanted there to be, lots of potential content. So I do feel it kind of makes sense that he was trying to, I don't know, like prove a point and make sure that the returned detective
Hmm.
has had a lot of work
Yeah.
in those years. So I feel like part of that might be the reason for like the massive volume of, the manuscript.
I
Right. He just come back and he's more popular than ever. I mean,
Mhm.
look
Yeah,
when he returns and everybody is clamoring for his attention and
yeah.
everybody wants to have cases with him and see these giant stacks of cases we have and how great it is.
Hmm.
So he's setting the stage for, yeah, for
Because within
a
the
giant
stories,
return.
with the chronology, that is the year.
Hmm.
He leaves in '01 and he comes
Yeah.
back 3 years later in 1894,
Hmm.
alive from the Reichenbach.
Yep.
And so that would be a year he would be perhaps very popular. That does make sense. And then we get this great run of unpublished cases. But whether it's I can't tell whether it's 4 cases or 6 cases. Is it is it the repulsive story of the Red Leech and the terrible death of Crosby the banker the same, or are they two different
Or are they
Yeah.
too
stories?
different?
Um, and then the Addleton tragedy and the singular contents of the ancient British Barrow. Same question. Are they two
Mhm.
stories or is that one? And then this famous Smith Mortimer succession case. And then the utterly fascinating, the one you can find, well, you can find pastiches of all these, I think.
Mhm.
But the tracking and arrest of Hure, the Boulevard assassin. Um, that's the
Such a
one.
good title.
Yeah, that he got the Order of the Legion of Honor from the
Mhm.
French president, this great award that I was doing some research on, and something like 40,000 people had been given this award, and it's like 10,000 Americans. Even by Holmes's time, thousands of people had been given this award. So it was probably just mailed to him. And there you go. But I love this. I'm just thinking, yeah, what's like, I don't know, Watson. I would have, well, you should have told that story. Instead, you told the pince-nez, and you could have told the tracking and arrest of Hure. Um,
I don't know. I wanted to hear about the Red Leech. I'm very curious as
yeah,
about that one.
yeah, I like the ancient British Barrow because
Mhm.
I can't
Mhm.
help but think of it's
Right.
Tolkien.
And a
When
hole in the ground.
yeah, the Barrow Whites and Holmes.
Hmm.
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 Holmes discovers there's no supernatural going on here. So,
No, and it's just like Frodo and Sam walking around and being scared of the ghost.
well, and that French one is just another reminder of Holmes bringing his services to the continent. We've had a
Mhm.
couple
Mhm.
mentions of this in the stories up to this point. I think we've already had the Vatican cameos mention, or helping the Pope. I think that was already in a story. I think
I can't remember where in
I
the
get
because I get it
confused
mixed up
sometimes.
between published versus the actual story date. You know what I mean? So I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Um, but this has happened before, and he's become an international figure now, and people know him. And he has solved cases in at
Mhm.
least Europe already. So they and then Watson goes right into this. It was a dark and stormy night, kind of. opening, but much better than Bulwer Lytton.
Yes,
Doyle.
yes. I was thinking the same. No, actually, it's one of my favorite beginnings of the stories because of this awareness of how small they are in comparison, right? So it's Watson just kind of acknowledging that they're in the center of growing London. By 1904, right, London had grown, right? So
Mhm.
for Doyle, that would have been like a modern city, much more modern than it had been when he started writing. So for him to acknowledge that there's like 10 miles in each direction of like the heart of civilization, and it seemed like molehills to him, right? It's just a beautiful
Mhm.
image of just like how bad the weather was, like how stormy it must have been, how small they must have felt in this moment. So to me, it's just a beautiful description of just the forces of nature. And of course, we needed to like not have footprints, right? But that feels much more like again, possibly just Doyle loving weather descriptions,
Mhm.
and just kind of having Watson reflect on this. And I really love this notion of just how small and insignificant they feel because we constantly talk about this great detective, right? This most amazing thinking machine. But even he's just kind of, sitting in this kind of dark and damp room in November. And things aren't great outside, right? So I love that
Mhm.
kind of, yeah, just putting things on a scale a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, very human.
Well, and I was going to say, I think that's one of the things about the Sherlock Holmes stories that we love so much is not even just, yes, Holmes is intelligent and he's an amazing detective and we learn all these really interesting cases and how he works, but the fact that Doyle is able to weave all of those human elements back into the story themselves and gives it gravity and context that I think a straight detective story doesn't necessarily always have.
Mhm.
And I know that Doyle always wanted to, oh, I'm here for better things. I can write better things than Sherlock Holmes. I don't necessarily need to write Sherlock Holmes, but he pays the bills, so that's great. I think it was an opportunity, like you said, for him to sort of let that part of his writing loose a little bit, to remind people that,
Mhm.
hey, by the way, I actually do know how to write, and
Mhm.
not detective mysteries, but what he thought was as real writing. So
Mhm.
I love seeing that because it's like it sneaks in there, and like you said, yeah, it has a reason, but he's like, let me just give you a little reminder of just how good I really am.
Mhm.
I wonder too, as you know, because knowing that he writes his stories from the first sentence to the last, and
Hmm.
that's it. That's just how he writes it. There's light, oh, missing a word, adding a word here, kind of thing. But
Hmm.
that that hearing this opening, if almost like the story that he's thinking of writing is almost a different, like that I'm
Mhm.
like that it's going to be some kind of gothic, tale in the end. Now we still get in the end with the relationships of Anna and the people that there's some kind of tempestuous things going on there, but this is almost like a gothic feel to
Mhm.
it that doesn't come
Hmm.
true. And I wonder if it's not like this is him in his head thinking, oh, this is a story because he knows this tale, these stormy revolutionists that it's going to finish with, but it doesn't really finish that way, at least in the story proper, and how it's set up.
I
Um,
think he felt really positive about writing the story, right? Because when he says like none of these cases was as incredible as this case I'm going
yeah,
to tell you, and then he has this very strong opening, and then it just kind of, fizzles out towards the end. So I think you're right in terms of that. Maybe he thought it was going to be more than what it turned out to be, and it just kind of didn't work out. But I mean, I guess the story's full of red herrings and full of
yeah.
Hmm.
misreadings by Hopkins that all make sense on the surface, but then are just wrong because he doesn't have all the facts. So I guess maybe that's like we're also tricked into thinking it's a different genre.
Yeah.
I actually wondered if he might not have been inspired by the weather first instead of,
Mhm.
writing it as oh, I've got this great idea and it needs to be dark and stormy. And I part of me wonders if he was sitting at home one night and thought, man, if you had a dark and stormy night like this and it was windy and boy, you could just go out and do anything you wanted and nobody would ever see your footprints and then all of a sudden it just started to unspool in his head and he's like, I've got this great idea, it's going to be great. And so he starts to write it all down and then as you said it starts to fizzle. He's like, oh, darn it. It's, I mean, I've done that where I've tried to I cannot write mysteries to save my soul. I've tried two or three different ways of doing it and there's usually something I forget. So the fact that he was able to write it all at one time and not go back and just start adding chunks in there.
Just Hopkins.
Where they wrote
We can
back
get to
then.
his red herrings in a little bit because a few of them I think were intended to go somewhere and actually didn't do anything at all.
All righty. Well, Holmes is busy looking at a palimpsest that just says the big old capital P as if it's the palimpsest. Uh, for people that might not know, and especially working in a rare book museum that I do, a palimpsest is a manuscript page in which some of the text, what has been written on it, has been removed. And usually, especially with old parchment pages, it's literally scraped off and then reused for something else to be rewritten on it. But because of these old pages, the ink really seeps all the way through, and you wind up with a little faint impression of what was on there before. There have in history, some works have been discovered, or partial works have been discovered this way in palimpsests. So some ancient text was taken off and another was added, but then no other copies of that ancient text that had been taken off survived, and this winds up being the only way to have it, that it survives. And Holmes is
fantastic.
Doing one here, but then as he says in a little bit, it looks like it's just an account book for an abbey, and nothing exciting. No lost text.
2 pounds of carrots.
Yeah, exactly.
6 shillings, 5 potatoes. Can you imagine though being like by candlelight with a magnifying glass and you're looking at it so closely because we didn't have laser scanners that could help you decipher this text, and you're like this and you're like, what does that say? It says C and I don't know what that means, and you're like, oh, I've almost got it, and then it says carrots. Like, what the heck?
I feel like that is exactly kind of the tone that we end up with, because like as soon as Hopkins comes, right? So first of all, the first thing, which I love, it's like an ultimate diss before he even like enters the Baker Street, is that Holmes says, oh no, Watson says, well, no, it's Holmes who said, run down, my dear fellow, and open the door, for all virtuous folk have been long in bed. And then Hopkins comes in, right? So that's already him judging him. And then when Hopkins asks him whether he's actually read like the papers today, and he says, no, well, what does he say? I've seen nothing later than the 15th century today, like no context. Hopkins has no clue what's going on. So he doesn't know what to do with that information, but it's just so funny that Holmes is like, well, I guess you'll have to deal with this. So I feel like it's very funny. He's being very humorous in that story.
Oh, for me, it's nice that he offers some cigar as soon as he comes in. Like, here's tobacco. And the doctor has a prescription containing hot water and a lemon. I'm pretty sure brandy.
Brandy.
It has brandy in it.
This sounds like a hot toddy.
Got brandy right here.
There, So
definitely
good medicine on a night like this. So for the whole family. So maybe it was Baltimore rye.
Got to get that Baltimore rye.
Hopkins doesn't know what to make of this case that he has. I can make neither head nor tail of it. Of course, that's why he's coming to Holmes. And we met Stanley Hopkins, before. We met him first in the Black Peter. You can go back and watch that episode if you haven't seen it yet, when Holmes taught Hopkins about the possibilities of harpooning a human being and how that could or could not be done. And Holmes treats him like a kind of young protege, or at least a kind of, in that story, like some kind of inspector with real promise. But also, when you read that story, Hopkins misses everything. Like he gets nothing out of this case. And we talked about it at the time. I don't know what does Holmes see in him if he's like as bad as the rest of the police. They like have their things that they do, but this case here, we really see Hopkins as really kind of trying to apply Holmes's methods, and has made a real effort in this. He's not like Lestrade showing up where like, I don't know what the heck's going on here, I'm going to go ask Holmes. Hopkins has really tried to work through some things and then hit the dead end.
I think that's why Holmes likes him so much, is the fact that he is, yes, he might miss everything at first, but he's so earnestly trying to learn Holmes' methods and apply them the way they should be applied, I think Holmes gives him a wide berth. Plus, he is as susceptible to flattery as anybody else. He likes it when people think he's amazing and, oh, I listened to everything that you said and I've done all the things that you told me to do. I think he gives him a pretty, pretty open field to screw up without getting too much. Although he does give him a little bit of, he gives him a little bit of grief later on the story. He's like, now, once you've actually figured out that you don't actually know anything,
Yeah.
now we can go on and learn some things about,
It's such a good line, though. It's such a good line.
The actual line is, if I can find it.
There's something now that we've learned nothing. No, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What did you do, Hopkins, after you had made certain that you had made certain of nothing?
Of nothing. Yeah. Like, man,
good.
he is really in a mood today, isn't he?
Well, before we find out what Hopkins, in the case that he's bringing to him, let me have a short mid-break here and take this moment to thank all of you for watching this episode. As a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep programs like this free and accessible to hundreds of fellow Sherlockians worldwide. I hope you will consider supporting the Rosenbach and Sherlock Monthly by donation. You can do that at our website, or you can become a member. Membership gives you free museum admission, discounts on programs and courses, and early access to registration. You can learn more about how to become a member at our website as well. And we're also very grateful for our show sponsors. Lisa Washington has been sponsoring the show since the beginning, and I thank her very much for that. She is absolutely wonderful. And we have a new sponsor for this season of Sherlock Monthly. For the entire season, Belanger Books will be sponsoring us. And here is a lovely Sherlock-centered logo for them. Belanger Books publishes all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, solar ponds, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the 21st century. You can explore the mysteries of 221B Baker Street, the horrors of Lovecraft's nightmares, and the wondrous worlds of H.G. Wells, all at Belanger Books. You can visit them today at belangerbooks.com. Thank you so much. Derek Belanger will be a co-host too on Sherlock. Sorry. Derek Belanger too will be a co-host as well on Sherlock Monthly later this season, which will be really nice. For the Rosenbach, we have lots of great programs and in-person programs and in-person and online at the Rosenbach this fall. Including many online reading seminars, which one of the things that I put together for the Rosenbach. Some of them are already sold out, but there are great courses on Don Quixote, James Joyce, The Great Gatsby, the Black Freedom Tradition, Birthright Citizenship, King Lear, Kurt Vonnegut, Oliver Twist, Pride and Prejudice, and Music Stories with Wesley Stace. That's a great lineup right there. If you're interested in taking any of those online seminars, you can go to the Rosenbach's website and register for those. And I hope to see you in a course at the Rosenbach. You can also join us on our Facebook group page, Sherlock Monthly, for lots of Sherlockian info, news, links, conversation, and fun. I'm always posting there, and lots of people to watch the show post all kinds of fun stuff there. And you can always write to me at epettit, E-P-E-T-T-I-T, at rosenbach.org. I love to hear from our audience. Back to our story.
Just one brief thing. I just saw in the chat that Claire said that the sexology book is on Google Books, so we can all read
we were
it
talking. I thought I should look it up. I wonder if I could just find it.
Thank you, Claire, for finding that. That's awesome.
Am I going to be shocked? Like discovering
it's going to be homework for next time.
Discovering a picture of Marie Corelli. Like, what? How is that's not?
That's not the picture I expected of Marie.
Yeah. Hopkins tells his story, and it's Professor Coram has a young assistant, Willoughby Smith, a young man straight from the university, has been murdered. Coram is an invalid. He's working on a book right now. Smith is a secretary. Um, the maid hears a scream, goes in, and a wild horse scream, so strange and unnatural that it might have come either from a man or a woman. So horrifying that it was kind of, degendered, this scream, and it could have been anyone. And Smith is found stretched on the floor. Blood was pouring from the underside of his neck. It was pierced by a very small but very deep wound which had divided the carotid artery or carotid artery. And it was done with a small sealing wax knife. I don't have a picture of one, but they're not long stiletto-like knives usually. Sometimes they're even blunted on the end because they're just for spreading the wax usually. But certainly able to puncture your neck. So it's not like his throat was slit, as probably my email still says to everybody watching this, show. Like, I got all the details wrong on this writing. I don't know what happened to me suddenly writing the details of this, but his neck is punctured, which is even worse. In a sense. And but the biggest and then as he's dying, the maid is there, and as he's dying, he says, "The professor, it was she," and then croaks. So, dot 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 ugh, you don't write when you're dying. Monty Python, Holy Grail.
Yep.
But and the issue with Hopkins is he can figure out things that have gone on here, but he can't figure out a motive. And without a motive, he can't figure out this case. And which is part of his, and part of, for Holmes, is always, this is always part of the kind of the problem with the police is that what he often says, that they have no imagination. So they can't come up with a story, but use the facts, figure out the story, and then the motive will be there in the story, but they can't do that. And Hopkins certainly has put together some facts here, but he doesn't have enough imagination to figure out how this thing would have come about.
And he gets so many of them, right? All of the little details about the fact that, there's only steps on one side of the path, that there are, there's coconut matting on two different corridors, that there is a scratch on the door but he just gets the inference of all of it wrong, right? So he's gotten the idea of how to pick up the clues. So he's about halfway there.
Well, he thinks he did. He says there was really nothing wanting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Holmes says, except Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Except Mr. Sherlock Holmes, exactly.
But I love the little map that he draws, because twice it said it's a rough chart. And it's like, you look at it, it's so detailed. Like, all the steps of the stairs are drawn in. It's like one of the most, beautifully rendered kind of floor plans that we get. And Hopkins is like, well, I'm not sure you can use it, but it's like,
let's look at the map too, because
I love it so much.
A thing I did.
Here's the map, and here's the map in both the Strand on the top here, and then the one in Collier's at the bottom, which was cleaned up.
Very rough. Very rough.
But the one on top that was redrawn. Doyle drew a map, and then this was redone at the Strand. And it's the desk and bureau, Smith's body, professor's study, that's what this room is, window, door, corridor, garden path, the professor's bedroom. And right here he's got car.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, in the Collier's illustration, they don't use it. Everything else is there, and they don't put car here. And then in the book the first British publication that Noon's put out with all the stories in The Return of Sherlock Holmes, this top illustration is used without car. So it looks like Doyle had written this and sent it, and probably from him, or it came like remove car at some point, like it didn't matter.
Right.
Or maybe he even removed it from the copy that he sent Collier's, because we do know that two of these illustrations were made, one to go to the Strand and one to go to Collier's. In
Oh,
the
okay.
manuscript, there's a blank page and a little sticky piece there, like some kind of sealing wax, and it says a note. It says, make two copies needed, but not for the third, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So in it, what we assumed there was the map that Doyle himself had made and put there.
Okay.
Then, and he said copies need to be made for two copies, obviously one for Collier's and one for the Strand. And perhaps after looking at those, he realized that it wasn't necessary, or at some point. But the fact that it's out of the book says that
Mhm.
at some point somebody realized car doesn't belong there.
Yeah, it's not
There's
really
no car in the story.
Yeah.
right.
But did that mean Doyle was going to bring a car into the story in some way? Like in his head, as he's piecing this together, there's something about a car must have been involved in his conception of the story.
Hmm.
Somebody drives
How
there,
she got there as
something is
opposed
left at the
to, yeah.
car. And then when he finished, he's like, oh yeah, I never wrote that about the car. I guess you don't need it on the illustration.
Possibly.
They
I
forgot to
mean,
take it
what
out.
It's all
it's
conjecture.
1904. It's 1904, right? So the question I ask is how, because she was in Siberia, right? She was in the Gulag basically. And then
Mhm.
she's supposedly wealthy and well dressed and
I was,
like a
yeah.
lady. Like I mean, I don't know how many cars were in Russia at this point in time. There must have been like a handful, maybe, right? Very early
Well, I
ones.
assume this would have been Coram's car, but
Possibly, but
Possibly.
like he can't move.
Yeah. And
He's
it's
the
not
you have
like
a
really
driver. You have a
car.
driver. He's pushing
that's
you around in the
true.
bath chair. He can
Well, but they
That's
talk about the fact
true.
that you're never leaving. Like they never leave.
Yeah,
They said
Yeah.
weeks could go by without
self-contained.
anybody
Yeah.
Yeah.
leaving. But yeah, I sort
Well,
of had that question too about, well, we can get back to it later about
well,
how
but maybe
somebody
Doyle
managed to
thought
get
all
her
this and
wealth
realized
after
I don't need a car.
leaving.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe
But there
they
is
just
an
had a car.
advertisement for an Oldsmobile in the Collier's version of this
Mhm.
story. There is an advertisement for a car. So
Maybe just meant it's part of Coram's like buyout, like his sellout of his friends. That
mm,
he just was wealthy enough when the time came to own a car, because this was before people owned car, like private citizens or subjects owned cars, right? So he would have been very wealthy to
mhm.
be able to to do that. But I guess yeah, it would have not really mattered for the story.
I don't know the exact time. This may have been Doyle may already have a car. He got
In
very interested
1904,
in he got
Yeah,
very interested in
he
them,
was really into
mm,
motoring.
and at
Very,
least knew
very,
about them. He knew about the
yeah, oh,
development of
definitely,
them even by this
definitely,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and he loves like as soon as he's doing the bike craze, there's bikes in his stories all over the
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And
But I
um
think it wasn't until 1906 that private
oh
citizens were
six.
actually allowed
Okay.
to have cars. Yeah, it was around about that time,
Yeah.
and there were cars, but they would not have been owned by like normal people.
Yeah.
So I guess it's one of those things they was super fascinated by. So it would have made sense to just him wanting to have a car in that story.
mhm.
But yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. And he must have realized that at some
Well,
point.
Yeah.
also, well,
Because
no, but he's writing this in 1904, and then, but the story's 1894.
right, so he couldn't really have one.
There's no
Oh, yeah,
cars,
that's true.
Time
so
travel.
that's what it is. Of course,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I didn't think of that
Good
before.
point.
He realized
True.
himself, like, oh no, there were no cars. So, yeah, would have been what do you call it?
Science fiction.
Yeah. So, maybe it was maybe he should have written TARDIS, but there was a blue police box, and then it was gone. Um, well, yeah, Hopkins did notice that there were footmarks. There were no footmarks on the path, but
Right.
somebody did step along the grass border. You mentioned that. And then Holmes does this thing that he always does. Somebody's giving the story, and then Holmes suddenly has all these questions to ask.
Mhm.
This is how he shows how they missed everything. But it's his way of figuring it out, and you couldn't. a whole range of questions, a large foot or small, you could not distinguish, and then Holmes gave an ejaculation of impatience. Well,
Yes.
like I can't believe
He's
it.
so done with it. Even though Hopkins gives him all the details he needs. I mean, that's
Right.
kind of the irony. He's like, so, just, you can't think for yourself, but like he's just given him all the things he needs
Right.
to solve the case.
And Hopkins is so proud of this. Like, oh, and I checked and I could see that they went this way, but I could
Mhm.
check and they didn't go that way. And Holmes is like, you missed it entirely. I was like, oh,
Like, what exactly did he miss? He didn't miss
no.
anything.
He missed it whether they're large or small.
He couldn't
Oh
tell.
yeah. Oh right. Right.
Or whether
Did
they
they
were
go backwards
coming or
forward?
going.
He's like,
like,
I
well,
looked, but you couldn't tell.
Holmes would have seen that. So, and we have seen him see those kinds of details and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
It's
true.
not as if you kind of think that like Holmes is, that wouldn't be improbable for Holmes to have actually have seen that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, as he'll show in a moment with the glasses. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, but there was no robbery. It wasn't self-inflicted, or it didn't seem that way. And then this is when Hopkins reveals the Golden Pince-Nez with two broken ends of black silk cord dangling from the end of it. And Jessica has a
This
pince-nez.
very pair.
This is it.
I actually inherited these from my stepmother's mother, and I don't know who they belong to, but they are from the O.I. Crawford and Company optometrists south side of the square, Marion, Indiana. And this is important later for my dating evidence. And here's the case. You can't really see it too well, but
I'll share a photo
within
after you do that.
within is a pair of gold pince-nez. There's no golden kind of rim around the outside, which is what the ones in the story have. But they do have the little spring-loaded clips for the nose, and they are lined with cork, as Holmes points out. You can actually see the cork on these, and you would just wear them. And see, this is where it gets to be. I cannot wear these because the bridge of my nose is too wide for these, so you can't actually put them on, or at
I
least
guess you
I
would have
can't put them
gotten
on.
them
There we go.
custom made, right?
They are
Oh,
spring
nice.
loaded. See, I didn't
Custom-made.
realize they were spring loaded.
Yeah, they're spring-loaded, and then
Yeah.
you put the little hook on your ear like this.
That looks
And
really
then
good.
if you don't want them, which most people didn't, they didn't like to show that they had to wear glasses because, vanity. You just take them off, and they can hang by your ear if you're busy, especially for someone who is having to use them to write or to do accounts or things like
Yeah.
that. It would be easier for sewing or something like that. You could just hang them on your ear.
It looks so good on you, though.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, these are about 1919 to 1920. That's when Dr. Crawford was on the south side of the square in Marion, Indiana. By about 1921, he had moved his optometry office to the Marion National Bank building, which is still in Marion, which is not on the south side of the square. So he had just kind of subsumed another optometrist practice at that point. Dr. Crawford did not come to Marion until after 1917 or 18, so after the war. So he was able to then, oh, there you go. He was able to then start his optometry practice. But this was the tail end of when pince-nez were popular. They were not very popular after the spring-loaded temple arms were introduced because it made wearing glasses so much easier, right? But the pince-nez was invented, I believe, in the 1750s, maybe a little bit earlier than that. So we had a good run, but then most people didn't use them after that. You get your own little certificate with your prescription on it in case you needed it.
Ooh,
And
there
we
you
still
go.
have the prescription card for this pair. It's not filled out, but yeah,
And
they
the name is literally means pinch nose, right?
correct.
Yeah.
That's literally what it means. Oh, and I have a spare earpiece too. So anyway, I just thought they were fun. When you said we were going to do this, I had a brainwave and remembered
There
I
you go.
actually owned a pair of these. but they're fun. They're fun to have. But and that's my show and tell for the day.
Thank you. Well, Holmes takes a look at them, and this is that Collier illustration. He's looking at them, and the uh he holds them to his nose, tries to read through them, goes to the window, stares at the street, really gives a real examination, looks at them. Then he writes some lines down and hands it to Hopkins, and it reads, "Wanted, a woman of good address, attired like a lady. She has a remarkably thick nose, with eyes which are set close upon either side of it. She has a puckered forehead, a peering expression, and probably rounded shoulders. There are indications that she has had recourse to an optician at least twice during the last few months, as her glasses are of remarkable strength, and as opticians are not very numerous, there should be no difficulty in tracing her." And then Hopkins gets to do the astonishment that, usually is Watson's, right? And he's astonished by this, but Holmes goes through it all, and it's basically because of the strength and the gold and how nice they are that he can make all kinds of suppositions about how her appearance, how her face and shoulders would have developed over the years, constantly peering at things. Yeah, you can believe it I can believe it in the story.
I wish it's like one chance.
Story.
It's one chance where Arthur Conan Doyle could have done a self-insert. Like he could have just like name dropped himself as like one possible. Because he was working at the time, right? He was actually having a practice.
Optometrist.
He had studied ophthalmology, and this was the practice with absolutely zero walk-in customers for his practice,
except one Russian lady.
Yep.
And then in the manuscript, he even writes convex lenses, which is wrong. He should have wrote concave. And the Strand corrected it, but Collier didn't, because they just had the manuscript. So they just wrote, so here's this guy trained to do this who gets the wrong word.
Oh my gosh.
And then
that's why he didn't have any customers.
Dr. Doyle, I cannot see.
Yeah. Well, he studied it all in German, and his German was like,
very true, very true.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, he went to Germany to study ophthalmology.
Oh, okay.
Part of his issue was
did not know that.
Wasn't as good at German, right?
Oh,
okay. And then left.
He tried. Attempts were made, but yeah.
That's amazing.
But what I love is that it has one of the lines that I think are quoted a lot and also appear a lot in adaptations, which is, "Surely my deductions are simplicity itself." Like that's something that we know, and he doesn't say that a lot in other stories, but he says it here. So I love that this is like in this very random, not very good story, that this very line is in there, and then Hopkins is just completely losing himself over it. It's so funny because he says like, "By George, it's marvelous," cried Hopkins in an ecstasy of admiration. It's beautiful. I love him. I guess that's why Holmes loves Hopkins.
Yeah, too. Exactly.
Poor Watson. We get zero Watson time lines from, like, as soon as Hopkins has walked in, Watson's like, "I'm still here." Nope. I'm talking to Hopkins.
Yep.
Hopkins is fulfilling the Watson role of being.
Oh, he is. He is. Holmes is inviting him to warm his toes. He never once said something like that to Watson. Never once.
Watson's just the guy that has to answer the door. Watson, would you answer the door? Well, Stanley Hopkins has got Holmes's attention. And now he's got, and then even tells them he's got the train time. There's a train from Charing Cross to Chatham at 6 a.m. We could be at Oxley Old Place between 8 and 9. Sherlock's like, "Okay, we're there." He's going to light his spirit lamp and give him a cup of coffee before they start. And then we get a little callback to an old story. That Watson, well, and maybe this is why, hey, this is what I think. Like Watson's been ignored for this whole meeting and like I'm not important. But then as they're traveling, we saw the cold winter sun rise over the dreary marshes of the Thames and the long sullen reaches of the river, which I shall ever associate with our pursuit of the Andaman Islander in the early days of our career. Remember that, Holmes? When
Sign
Our
of the
career.
four.
yeah. So
Beautiful.
Yep.
um and then they get there and and then Holmes pieces it all together. And you know, Holmes goes over all the same ground that Hopkins did. Goes over the scene, goes over the path. Um, and he has all these telling little lines that, you know, that Watson gives. I saw an intent look pass over Holmes's face, and you know, at all these kinds of things, and you know, Holmes will give an expression, and Watson will notice it and write it. And then when you finish a story, when you can go back and reread it, you realize at each moment what
Hmm.
Holmes was thinking, even though it's not told at the
Hmm.
time, which I find fascinating about these
Hmm.
stories. Um, um, Holmes even notices that there's scratch marks on this uh, uh, brass work on the right side of the keyhole, on the wooden bureau.
Hmm.
Um, and Hopkins like, of course I saw that. I saw it. I swear I saw it, but I didn't think it was anything big deal. And Holmes like, no, you could see it wasn't dusted, so you know these things, marks, the varnish would have gone away. So, um, and then they find out it was what's in the bureau was secured with a Chubb's key. Uh,
Hmm.
we've had anybody remember where the last mention of a Chubb key or lock was in Sherlock?
No. Darn.
Irene Adler's Bryony Lodge is
Oh.
secured
Oh,
with a Chubb lock.
nice.
And for people reading this at the time, what they recognized it as this is a secure, this is somebody
Safe.
who
Yeah.
keeps something
Hmm.
secure. Uh,
Right.
this is what you use in prison. This is what you use to, you know, lock your jewels up with this
Hmm.
kind of system because this special Chubb key, what would happen is if somebody tried to pick it, it had a system where it would then seize up and then it couldn't
Oh.
be opened even by your regular key. So if you went to open it with a key and it wouldn't open, you meant, somebody tried to get in here. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think this was a big deal, what was a big deal and a big invention until I think it was the exhibition in London when they had the some kind of famous jewel, the Nord diamond
Oh.
or something in it,
Hmm.
and they wanted to test it, so they got this pick lock criminal to try it, and he did, and he opened it right up.
Oh,
So
wow.
um, so that, but you know, you got to be
Oh.
a total expert. Like Sherlock could open it, but nobody else. Like your regular old dumb, you know, guy can't do
Hmm.
it. So, um, I went down a whole history of safes, Chubb locks, thing. I'll put a link in the
That's
chat. I
awesome.
was I was like, oh my God, this is so fascinating. I did not, as later we will see, I did not go down a Coptic Christianity kind of rabbit hole. That would have been easy too. We find out that's what Professor Coram is studying. I'm like, ooh,
Mhm. The book he's writing, right? Hmm.
yeah. Um, but now, so Holmes goes over everything, and Holmes is piecing together. This is how it happened. If this is the body's here, and I saw the path, and so he's already assembled, just as Hopkins did. I don't think Holmes did any better job than Hopkins at this point, except for finding out about that key that somebody was trying to get something out of there, um, of how this murder occurred. Um, but of course, where did the killer disappeared? Um, this is like a locked room mystery
Hmm.
Hmm.
in a sense, right? It's like, you know, there is a door that's open, but clearly the person didn't go out the door. So it becomes that thing where
Right.
this is where it happened and but there was no escape. So how did it happen? Uh,
Hmm. And it has another diss of Hopkins because Holmes is like, well, pay special attention to the coconut, matting in the hall. And Hopkins is like, why would that matter? And Holmes is like, well, it might not matter, and maybe we can forget about it, already knowing that it matters because he already solved the case. And he's just, I mean, I love that he's like supporting him, but he's also always teasing him. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So now they go and visit the professor in his bedroom, and we get a couple of great illustrations of him too. The Paget one isn't as well. I'll share the Paget one. Here's the Paget with the professor in the bed here. Old guy beard. So it's not a bad. I'm not gonna. It's a good beard. But and they're all looking at him, and Holmes is always get the cigarette in his hand.
Honestly, like they made him look like Tolstoy or something, which I
Yeah,
thought was
I've
hilarious.
heard that if you look at Tolstoy pictures from this time period,
Yeah,
late 19th century, that he's a bit Tolstoy
I
looking.
literally did. I was like, because I looked at him and I went, I have seen that man before, and then I had to think about it for a minute, and I went, Russia, 1890, no, Tolstoy, and I looked and I was right.
Here's the Frederick Doyle, which I like a lot. He gives him a lot.
Hmm.
There's a lot more. I mean, the whole face. There's so much detail in here, and
Oh
you
yeah.
know, I envy this head of white hair. Boy, I wish I had that too, man. Boy, that would be great. But there he is smoking a cigarette, and I like to here's Holmes smoking his cigarette too,
Hmm.
which we'll get to in a second here. All the cigarette.
Mhm.
But they're really nice illustrated. This Frederick Doyle illustration I really like. So
Hmm.
he wasn't such a bad guy. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll hang this up. That'll be me.
But I'm sitting here looking at it thinking, oh my gosh, he's gonna set his bed on fire. One of these.
Also, I mean, also that, right? That also could have ended him. Yeah.
Um, he is his hair and beard were white, save that the latter were curiously stained with yellow around this.
Yellow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's
To
never
make
a
it
And his
tragedy.
seem,
hand.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. And a cigarette glowed amid a tangle of white hair. The air of the room was fetid with stale tobacco smoke.
Mm.
It's like the bar of the next day, right?
Yeah.
A smoker, Mr. Holmes, said he, speaking well-chosen English with a curious little mincing accent. Pray, take a cigarette. And you, sir, I can recommend them, for I have them especially prepared by Ionides of Alexandria. He sends me 1,000 at a time, and I grieve to say that I have to arrange for a fresh supply every fortnight. Bad, sir, very bad, but an old man has few pleasures, tobacco and my work, and that is all that is left to me. And then Holmes lights a cigarette too. So, um, now for Sherlock, as we know, Holmes smokes it all. He smokes pipes
Hmm.
most frequently. He smokes pipes, but he also smokes cigars in many stories
Hmm.
and cigarettes in many stories too. It's one of the things I
Hmm.
liked about the Jeremy Brett the Granada TV series with Jeremy Brett is that he smokes cigarettes too, because it's in the stories. So, it's okay to do it. But 1,000 every fortnight, which is what 14 days. So
14 days,
yeah, it's a little more than 70 cigarettes
70 a
a day.
day.
Yeah, that's like 3.5 packs.
And think about the fact that you have to
Chain
sleep at
smoking.
some point.
Right?
I would
Right.
think, and an
I was
old
thinking the
man who
same.
doesn't he's so weak he can't get out
Oh,
of bed. How much time do
I've
you think he spent sleeping in a day?
well,
10 hours?
yeah, I've known people who smoke this much,
Yeah.
and they get up a couple times during the night and
Oh,
have a
wow.
cigarette. So
That would make sense because, like,
you can
at
make
that
yeah,
point, you need the
your body
nicotine. You,
tells you, and you
yeah.
suddenly wake up at 2 a.m. and you have a cigarette there, and there you go
Oh
back
my
to sleep, and
gosh.
then you wake up again maybe at 4 or 5 and you have a cigarette, and then you go back to sleep. So
Goodness.
that's a lot of smoking.
That's a
That's
lot.
more
Uh-huh.
smoking than I do. The Ionides, Les Klinger has a note that he even gives an address that it's a real cigarette place in London, but I can't find any.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know where Les found that information because I couldn't find it, but I did find but Ionides is a cigarette company, I don't know if they manufacture or they just distributed, but there was one called Ionides. Here's an advertisement for it. Ionides cigarettes for connoisseurs.
Oh,
Offered
Very
without
nice.
apology and accepted with appreciation. It's Turkish tobacco. It's the Greek Turkish thing. This address here is different than I think the one that Les Klinger had in his notes, or I'm wrong, and it is the same address, and now maybe this is what he found here, this, company.
I'm just trying to
No, he
think
has
of.
a different. He has a 3 Swallow Street off Regent Street in London. He found it.
Okay.
oh,
So, and this could have been the same place. Maybe this was even a little later, this advertisement, and they used to be there.
I mean, look how much they cost.
yeah.
1,000 is how much is that? 100 pounds? Or a hundred? No,
No,
it
I
can't
don't.
be.
It wouldn't have been pounds. No.
No, couldn't
No,
be.
uh, you know,
Wow.
I don't. It's got to be. Is that? I mean, it's not shillings. It's not that much. It's got to be.
Maybe pennies.
It's got to be pence.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
must have been. But it's fascinating because it says Turkish, Hasidic, and then the actual company says Balkan cigarette specialist. So it's like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
And then of course of Alexandria, this implication of Egypt.
right.
It's just like place dropping to make it seem exotic and like Orientalist. That's kind of fun.
I used to. My favorite cigarettes that I used to smoke were Turkish specials, and they came from Turkey, and they were often you'll see, and it's Turkish tobacco, but Egyptian cigarettes you see a lot, and I couldn't find them. I have some old cigarette. I mean, they were not old, like old in my lifetime. Really nice looking Egyptian cigarette boxes, and
Mhm.
but they're all Turkish tobacco. Egypt stopped producing tobacco, or couldn't produce tobacco really well.
Mhm.
But because it's all, especially this time, this is all Ottoman Empire. This is all the same, empire. And but that Egyptian cigarette thing became a kind of, badge of luxury, and it was a real
Uh-huh.
nice thing.
Right.
And it lasts up till Camel cigarette. I smoked Camels for a long time. So back to the beginning, I mentioned you guys wanted me to smoke cigarettes on the air. I'm not gonna do it. So
So Kaz is saying it's shillings.
shillings,
Is it
Yeah.
shillings? Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks, Cass.
that seems expensive.
It is. It
Oh
is.
no, I
If
guess
what,
not. 11 shillings per 100. No, that's not that expensive.
but like add that up to 1,000 every
Every
14
2
days.
weeks. Yeah,
Yeah.
That
that's a
is
lot.
Same as it is today. So, it's a lot of
kind
money to
of, kind
smoke,
of. Good thing you didn't have a car.
They were nice. That was quality tobacco there. You
Mhm.
can, of course, get, really, really bad tobacco for a lot cheaper, as you can today. So, of course, some people it's like it's all bad. Well,
But I love that Holmes like immediately jumps at the offer and just in like 15 minutes smokes 4 cigarettes,
Mhm.
walking up and down the room, and everybody's just kind of watching, going. I mean, everybody's like Hopkins, Watson, and Coram, and they're going, "No, I guess you're enjoying this, aren't you?" Like nobody questions the fact that Holmes is very clearly just like inhaling the cigarettes and walking
And
all
just
over,
ashing
and
all over the floor.
yeah,
well,
this is
Like
very
not even
normal Holmes
trying to use a
behavior.
saucer or anything. He's just
Very
like,
normal.
yeah, it's totally fine. No worries.
Well,
It's
they all
like,
notice it, and Watson mentions it at least 3 times,
mhm.
and Coram notices it. Holmes says, "I am a connoisseur." He said, taking another from the box and lighting it from the stub of that which he had finished. So he's but what this means is he's already
Mhm.
putting the ashes down to see where somebody has come out for.
Yeah.
So when he goes into the room and meets him, he has gone in thinking, she's in here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is the only way she could have gone,
Yep.
and she hasn't left, so she's here. Goes in. We'll find out later in the story. He immediately sees that there's not as many books around this one bookcase. This is where it must be. So, and this is all done within seconds. Like this is the mind of Sherlock Holmes. This is how quick it is. I'm going to go in a room. There's a killer in here. Where could the killer be? Probably there. Let me find out. Oh, here's some ashes, you know.
Mhm.
So I'll smoke over here. Um, uh, it's yeah, and it is fascinating to after you know that after you've done the story to come back and see how quickly he has put all of this together.
Oh, he's figured out as before he even walks in the professor's
Mhm.
room, he's figured it out. I mean, he's as soon as he gets into the hallway and sees the corridors, he's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
well, this is it. The only place that they can be is back here in his room, and that's it." So,
I've wanted to smoke the cigarettes the whole time I read. Like, by all means, take another cigarette. It is a pleasure to see anyone appreciate them so. Lost in thought, consuming cigarette after cigarette. I was like, man, I want some smoke. I mean, really, 'cause the pipe wasn't doing it then. I don't know how any of you guys read stories without smoking a pipe. I'd be like, this is like it is so much better to read. It's Tolkien too. It's so much better to read Tolkien smoking a pipe. I'll tell you. Maria knows this. So, um, but we find out that his book is on the he's researching and it's very obscure, this Coptic monasteries
Mhm.
in Syria and Egypt. So this is somebody, Reverend Casaubon, like from Middlemarch, doing this real deep esoteric research that you know two, 4 or 5 people in the world would read anyway. Um, uh, but this is but it's the kind of work that would keep him very isolated,
Mhm.
like he's not going to encounter a lot of people doing this kind of thing. He's somebody that needs to be, by himself, secretive. Um, uh, and then Holmes asks about a cupboard in the bureau, and the professor's like, "Oh, go ahead, look in there." And what I'm assuming is this is Holmes now narrowing it down further, right? Like somebody
Mhm.
could be in the cupboard. And
Mhm.
as soon as he offers him the key, Holmes realizes, well, not in the
Yeah.
cupboard. Uh,
Well, for him, he didn't think it would be anything important. He's like, "Oh, if you're freely offering me the key to go look around, then there
yeah.
must not be some," to him anyway, it wouldn't have been
Mhm.
important, but
And he has this really oh, did I pass over yet? No, they're still smoking and moving around here. Uh cigarettes will show me. Because he's really happy that, oh, here it is during this whole scene here, Professor Coram says, to a poor bookworm, an invalid like myself, such a blow is paralyzing. I seem to have lost the faculty of thought. But he says about Holmes, you're a man of action, you are
Mhm.
a man of affairs. It is part of the everyday routine of your life. You can preserve your balance in every emergency. We are fortunate indeed in having you at our side. And it's this little pray. I mean, it's, he thinks that he's getting away with something
Mhm.
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 when he's saying this, but we also get that image of Holmes as the superhero and the man of action. No, Watson was the man of, no, he's not. Holmes is the man of action.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Watson just helps sometimes. Uh, the that image of Sherlock as the superhero in a sense,
Mm.
even when said ironically by someone who thinks that they're pulling one over him, because he's the whole time he's got to be thinking it's Sherlock Holmes and the killer's right in that
Yeah.
behind that bookcase and he doesn't know it. But of course, Holmes did know the whole time.
Yeah. But what is funny is that at that point, we are already, like we as readers are already turned against Coram because Coram makes this disparaging remark against Susan, right?
Mhm.
So he basically says, well, Susan is a country girl, so don't, and you know the incredible stupidity of that class, right? So whatever she heard, she made up, or she was in hysterics or something, do not trust
Right.
her. So he feels like he's talking to people from his class, which he kind of is, right? So like upper middle class. And of course, he assumes that they think like him, that you can't take
Mhm.
anyone seriously. What he underestimates and doesn't know about Holmes is that he will happily listen to every class, right? And he also
Mhm.
believes women. And I feel like because at this point we know this, right? Even though later on Watson even says that when he talks to the housekeeper,
Yeah.
is that Holmes has this like talent for, you know, like befriending women, be really nice to them. And then after a few minutes, he talks to her like they have known each other their entire lives. So it's like one of those stories where we get to know that Holmes is actually really nice to women and, you know, believes them and trusts them. And at this point, we know Coram is somehow not the good guy. Like until this point, he was slightly suspicious, but also just like this eccentric elderly guy, invalid, right? So we kind of believed him until this point. But the moment he says this, it like everything is called into question. So like really brilliantly, the story is already pushing us towards thinking that something is off with Coram because he says this thing about Susan. And one thing that makes me wonder is possibly because she says the scream, like she couldn't say what kind of scream it was, that maybe it wasn't just Willoughby that screamed, but also Anna. Right, that they kind of screamed at the same time because she, I mean, that's kind of spoiling the end of the story, but
double
she stabbing
scream
him accidentally would have been very scared, and he would have been, you know, very scared by being stabbed or at being stabbed. So I feel like possibly the scream that she heard that was both hoarse as well as like panicky, both male and female, might have just been them screaming at the same time because they were both like really, really surprised by what happened. But it's never like that's never mentioned.
But speaking of Susan, you know, not only do we know that Holmes has already taken her seriously in everything that she says, but think about the kind of courage it took for her to hear someone screaming downstairs, or no, because she was in the front bedroom hanging curtains, right? She hears this scream, and what does she do? She runs downstairs to find out who's screaming and what's going on. When she could very easily have just stood there and been like, no, I'm not touching that. Instead, she's like, no, I'm going to go find out what's going, you know, and she gathered her courage and she went down there and figured it out. And I think Maria is completely right in that one moment is probably exactly when it was that we all just went, hang on a minute. That does not, his statement about Susan being stupid does not jive with a single thing that we have learned about her this entire time. So
when Holmes questions her, and he knows he leads from the smoking into the food. He's like, oh, somebody smokes that lot, doesn't eat a lot, right? And he's already told the professor we'll come back after lunch.
Yes.
2 o'clock.
And so we will find, and then and he's like, smoking kills the appetite. And she's like, oh no, boy. Usually, yeah, but today he's eating like crazy. He ate a big breakfast. Now he's ordered a big lunch. So Holmes is just waiting. And poor Watson he says, as to my friend, all his usual energy seemed to have deserted him. I had never known him to handle a case in such a half-hearted fashion. Holmes is like, I just gotta wait for after lunch. Like it's done. Like I'm bored now because I already solved it. But he wants this big reveal moment, as he always does. And poor Hopkins is running around trying to find clues and asking people in the neighborhood. Well, they finally go up after lunch. The eternal cigarette smoldered in Coram's mouth. And then Holmes knocks over the cigarettes and they all spill on the floor and everybody's got to get. I love when he does this thing. He does this in Reigate Squires.
Yeah,
too.
Reigate Squires.
Over the table. And then, well, not when he blames Watson. That would have been funny. Watson in this. What's
so mean?
Oh my God. But I love that, like, for the next few minutes, they were just like all on their knees, picking up cigarettes. Like, just this like interruption of the story. Like, nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's just kind of picking up cigarettes, like, off the floor, like cigarette butts. It's just beautiful. Like, just this image of just Watson, Holmes, and possibly Hopkins just doing that for like 5 minutes.
But it's funny though, because he was like, it gave him the opportunity to look right at the carpet. But at the same time, why did you need that? Couldn't you just walked in and be like, okay, I figured it out. Right? I figured it out. Let me just hang on a second. I gotta check this one thing. And then just kind of look down at the carpet.
He's involving everyone in the activity.
He had to be so dramatic about it. It had to be a thing. It had to be a scene. You know.
He's stage managing.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
I myself have a touch of the dramatic.
And Watson noticed it. Watson says Holmes's eyes were shining and his cheeks tinged with color. Only at a crisis have I seen those battle signals flying. Yeah. So he's all, and now Holmes just recounts the crime. and tells everybody what happened, and this happened, and then the it was the murder was, oh, he says, I have solved it. And then he goes on and he tells the whole story. And nobody came here to murder anybody. It was an accident because an assassin doesn't come unarmed. That's why they use the sealing wax knife. And then and Coram tries to bluff him like, she's like, what do you mean the killer's here? Of course you're not. Of course. And
Right.
points to the bookcase, the high bookcase. She is there. And and then she just comes out. I'm sure Holmes wanted to like go up and open it, but she walks out and was like, "All right, shut up.
Yep.
Here I am." And we find out why she's in a hurry soon. But she's brown with the dust and draped with the cobwebs which had come from the walls of her hiding place. Um, I didn't catch this early on, but we'll find out, what once we find out what their story is. But what dawned on me finally is, why is there a hiding place behind his bookcase? You know,
Hmm.
this isn't some old, castle where for a hidey hole for Catholics or something.
Hmm.
But obviously, Coram has been on the run and hiding from people. He needs a place like that, so if they come, he would go
Just in
in.
case.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, and sure enough, he winds up helping the person who was coming after him, but not to kill him, hide out in there. Uh,
Hmm.
Watson describes, well, we'll see the picture of her coming out, and then I'll read the description, because I think we have some comments on her appearance. Uh,
Mhm.
Here she is. Some old lady comes out. It's what it is. And Watson describes her as ups as she had a certain nobility in the woman's bearing, a gallantry in the defiant chin and the upraised head, which compelled something of respect and admiration. This is really nice for Watson to kind
Hmm.
of notice these things, because usually he's just negative when women aren't beautiful. And Hopkins had laid his hand upon her arm and claimed her as his prisoner, but she waved him aside gently and yet with an overmastering dignity which compelled obedience. Um, she certainly does she seems to be drawn kind of older than we would suspect. Because Jessica, you were telling me about what her age must be here, right?
Hmm. She marries the professor when she's 20 and the professor is 50. So there's a 30-year age difference between them. And then when she gets married, she talks about the fact that they were revolutionaries. They were part of kind of the nihilist movement in Russia. And I don't know a lot about it, so I'm going to leave that for others who have a better grasp on that history than I do. But that's like the 1870s, 1880s when that really kicks off and starts getting pretty heavy. So she ends up going to Siberia, right? So she's imprisoned for a certain number of years and she only gets out, she says about a year ago. She took her some months to try to find him and then she employs I don't want to like give too many spoilers, but she employs a private detective who comes in before Willoughby Smith, secretary. He's the secretary before.
Hmm.
So, we're talking a year since she's been out of the gulag in Siberia, for heaven's sake. She can't be more than 40, 45, something like that, maybe 50 on the outside. Um, which I thought was really funny because that would make the professor 75 or 80. And I think that's probably, with as much as that man smokes, I would say that's probably the far end of the age. No offense, Ed, but the far end of the age that I think he would probably be at that time. Um, and if he's elderly, then that would make her 45 or 50. Now, without telling on myself, I perhaps am of the same age. But yeah, I just thought it was funny when I was looking at these illustrations. I'm like, come on, Sydney, you're kind of, you're giving her a hard, you're kind of doing her hard here. And I will point out that the illustrations are of the 1904 fashion mode and not the 1894 fashion.
Oh,
The 1894 fashion would have had the big puffed sleeves, the nipped waist, and the blouson of the earlier era. So,
well, she's ahead of her time.
or something. Also, apparently very wealthy a
Yeah,
year
that's a
after getting out of the
question.
gulag.
That's a question that's never answered, is it? I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, that's weird.
Even the kind of, the real no recognize the real nobility in her. It's almost like they're setting her up like she has this kind of innate nobility in her, and
Hmm.
Coram is clearly like, oh, I'm this, peasant,
Hmm.
class. But I thought they were revolutionaries. Like
Hmm.
Right.
they would have been, not of that class more likely. Uh,
Hmm.
but perhaps they're just this kind of intelligentsia and they are part of that upper class, in the beginning, and this is the way they rebel against it. So, um, uh, but she comes, but this is noticed right away that then Watson noticed it, and even Hopkins is like, oh, okay, you're not my prisoner, and he help, she sits down.
Hmm.
They give her space, and then she tells the story, and she's Anna, and she's Russian, and his name I will not tell, and then she immediately says,
Sturgis.
Sergius. Well, but that's
Well,
only his first name. I mean, I get it. She's not
yeah,
telling his last
I
name.
guess there could be a million Sergiuses in
You
Russia.
know, so there were. She didn't give it away, but Sergius Anna. Then she'll later tell the other guy's name Alexis, and then he's in jail. You're gonna be able to find out what his name is.
And
Um,
like in the place I'm not gonna mention, and then you just look at the history books, like most of this happened in St. Petersburg. So but it's kind of very funny how he is just in this ultimately like patronizing way saying, well, God bless you,
God
Anna.
bless
He
you. God
cried,
bless
God
you.
bless you. Like, dude, what are you doing? This is not the time or place to talk to her at all. Like,
Yep.
you
Right.
destroyed her life. um it's just so
And
weird, and
he
like how
goes
he
through the
falls
whole
back.
scene, right? Doing
Yeah.
this. Oh,
It's
you're good to
crazy.
me. Thank
Oh
you.
my God.
You were always a
Um,
good person. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's
Yeah, you were
it's
always so good to me. Like,
Mhm.
like, what drove you to, just
well,
like tell on
this
your
is
friends?
this
It's
is his way
crazy.
of pleading for his life. This is his way of like, have
Yeah.
pity on me. I'm just a poor old guy smoking a cigarettes here.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna
right.
Mm-hmm.
hurt me now, are you? And the second he can, he'll send her back to the authorities if he could.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Uh,
I completely understand why in the Granada series he's killed. Like, it feels so much like even though so
This
much
is what
about
he
it
should
is
have happened.
non-canonical, yeah, is
Uh-huh.
the fact that there is a Russian in the garden just waiting to kill him.
they
Just
give the end,
feels
yeah.
much more satisfying of an ending than the story gives us.
Right.
They
It's like he hints at it. Doyle hints at it at the end where she's
Mhm.
like, if the Brotherhood knows where you are, then they will come and get you. And it's like, oh, I'm sure she probably dropped a line on the way. By the way, guys, I'm heading out. I'll catch you in England. I'll send
And
you a
the former secretary, I mean, he
Mhm.
worked at his house, so he also knows, right? And I mean, he's
Right,
alive. He just left after a while when he got the imprint of the key. So
right.
he knows. So clearly some knowledge about his whereabouts is out there.
that
So yes, it is
yeah.
implied, yeah.
Give us a minute. We're gonna get to that because I definitely want to get to
Okay.
that too.
Okay.
But she starts to tell her story and that we were revolutionaries, we were nihilists, and all I can, think as soon as she says we are nihilists is that I think that most people think this now is this is all I'm thinking of right here is Big Lebowski nihilists. Um, but she doesn't mean that kind of knowledge. And it's funny because in the Big Lebowski movie, they make the joke about, oh, they believe in nothing.
Yeah,
Well, that's not kind of what they mean when they say nihilists in the 19th century.
right.
They're anarchists. They definitely believe in a lot of things, but they
Hmm.
definitely don't believe in kind of monarchy and authoritative systems that they're trying to, get rid of. Um, uh, and this is it, and usually I find that usually anarchist and nihilist are kind of synonymous in this time period, that
Hmm.
they don't really necessarily distinguish between
Hmm.
these kinds of people. But this word of being used in nihilist from at least the mid, 19th century on. Doyle wrote a story called Night Among the Nihilists, so
Mm,
about these
okay.
radical revolutionaries. Um, but it's all before the Russian Revolution. I always find that if you wanted that, one of the best windows into that kind of world is Joseph Conrad's Secret Agent.
Oh
Mm,
God, yes, yes.
About these kinds of groups who were looking to blow things up and to be radicals, um, and also Oscar Wilde, who I did a Dorian Gray thing not long ago. His first play was Vera or the Nihilists, and
mm.
it was about these Russian nihilists who were trying to assassinate the Tsar.
Oh, interesting.
And it was not a, funny, bubbly, humorous play. Like as he learned to write soon after this, he did write something else, and then he found the way to like, oh, you know what? I should write all this funny lines that I can do. That would be better. But Vera or the Nihilist had a very short run on the stage.
But what I find fascinating is that Anna and Coram are not involved in the actual assassination of the Tsar, right? Because it's just like a police officer died and there were arrests made. Because when the assassination was in 62, I think. So
Hmm.
I assume that would have been a little bit earlier than their involvement in this. But I mean, it could like it feels a little bit like Doyle didn't want to connect them to like such a prominent case,
Right.
but rather to like one of the others where something happened and there were consequences, but also there were pacifists among them, right? So it feels a little bit like
Yeah.
he's trying to like just again explain that it was a complex. It wasn't like one specific group of people, but many
Right.
different ideas with many philosophies. And her and Alexei were of the pacifist kind, right? So to
Yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
make them noble characters.
Well, I think that, yeah, he definitely was trying to do that. And I find it funny, though, that he did not pass any judgment, and neither did anybody
Mhm.
else in this entire narrative about the fact that Alexei was the friend of her heart in this whole
Yes,
Yeah.
thing. That
yes.
she and Alexei were obviously in love with each other, and Coram is out here 30 years her senior, basically turning them in to this to the government. And it's a very romantic kind of
Hmm.
story. And we all know that Doyle had his own thoughts about, romance outside of marriage and things like that. And I think I just thought it was really interesting. He created this kind of romance in
Hmm.
the story that no judgment. Everybody thinks it's a wonderful thing that they
But
wrote.
there's also a whole story here that Doyle didn't write. Like there's a
Right.
Yeah.
whole other thing going on here that we just get these hints at from
Hmm.
her telling this story. And that she is also, for a nihilist. Boy, she's not very violent. Because they're not. I
Hmm.
mean, she's not. I mean, as she's explaining that she didn't go to kill him. She went to she really
Hmm.
is only trying to get the evidence to
Right.
Yes.
free
Right.
Alexei. That's it. Uh
Yes.
and
Which is why I'll get to it when we get to it.
Well, Holmes tries to interrupt her. Exactly, exactly. And and then she tells him to shut up. You must let me speak. Now, we know, of course, because she's dying, but now that we've finished the story, but but I love I love her stop your mansplaining, Sherlock. I'll tell the story moment here.
We
Um,
don't have time for this. Let me
Yeah.
speak.
Um, and these are my last words, she says. And then here's the packet to deliver to the embassy. And then Holmes says, stop her. She's got a file in her hand, but she says, too late. I already took it, before I left the hiding place. Um, and they're both, or not both, just the um, Strand illustrates that. Dorsteel didn't illustrate that. But this is the illustration that begins the issue of the Strand. It occurs, you see it before you even see the first text of the story, is
Mhm.
you see this grand denouement here, of her on the bed here. Yeah,
Hmm.
looking like she's in his age group.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But she's just taking poison and she's dying. So, um, uh, uh, and a nice dramatic scene from Paget, which is among a group of illustrations for this story, which Paget didn't have a lot of work with in this story to make
Mhm.
exciting illustrations, and this is the one scene that he really gets to do it for with. But she's taken the poison and she dies, and it's just she's that's it. It's just over. And and we'll get to it in a second. We'll get to Holmes in a second. He has to explain like on the train later how
Yeah.
like he was foiled for his moment of like let me tell you how this all works. And she's because she interrupted him and then she kills himself to interrupt him and he gets to do it. But she also mentioned, as you mentioned, Jessica, she has hired a private detective. Um, and that was one of the original secretaries that Coram had that he had to get rid of.
Mhm.
Um, and then, but there's some things that don't work in the end of the story. First of all, she should have hired Holmes, and then like, because imagine she could have gone into Holmes in the beginning and said like, "There's a guy, and he kept this diary, and I can prove that put this guy." And
Ah,
Holmes would have gone and stolen it for her.
but a
Uh,
year ago, where was Holmes? Holmes was dead.
Ah, very true,
Oh, because
very
it's been
true.
a year. Well done.
Yep.
Yeah. Holmes,
Ah,
she went to find Holmes and somebody was like, "Oh no, he's dead."
He's dead,
yeah.
Um,
sorry.
uh,
Yeah.
she had to go to the Victorian Yellow Pages and find the next private detective who who told
Ah,
who infiltrated into the house,
Yeah, he did a good
gave her a
job. I mean,
plan for it, but apparently he didn't tell her the address because then she's wandering in the neighborhood and she has to ask.
uh-huh.
She winds up
The
asking
right.
Willoughby
children.
Smith, "Do you know where Coram's house is?" And he does because
Yeah.
he's going there because he works there. He's the guy that she winds up killing. I mean,
Hmm.
that's interesting moment of that happens in Victorian novels, this fate kind of thing that he's the guy that happened to lead her
Yeah.
there, and then he dies. But
But
she should have known that where the house was.
also the fact that Coram wears the key around his neck, right? And he's
Oh,
basically the
yeah.
guy who gets the imprint of the key. He must have somehow gotten to it. So why not just actually make a replica and look into that? Like the fact that he only went as far as to get the imprint of it is just
Right.
so funny because he's like, oh, this is how far I'm willing to go. I'm not gonna actually commit breaking and entering, right? And he
Yeah.
could have, nobody would have had to die. Um, if you had actually finished the job.
Yeah. It's like, guy, you had the key in your hand, buddy. You could have got
Yeah.
it anytime.
He could have just used the key if he had the
Yeah, he
chance
could
to.
have just
He
used it
could have
and
just
gotten the
used.
papers and just been like, that's a good job. I'm done.
But I guess this speaks for the argument that Coram would have gotten up like a lot during the night because let's say he got the imprint of it
Oh,
while
yeah.
he was sleeping, then he probably would have thought I can't take the key because he might actually get up and smoke,
No,
Yeah,
and then I'll be
because he
caught. So
did.
maybe,
true.
yeah,
No way he's sleeping through the night.
he's
No.
not he's not sleeping at
No.
all. He's just always smoking.
Um, and then we get no, it's so abrupt. She takes
Yeah.
dead, and then a simple case, and yet in some ways an instructive one. Holmes remarked, as we traveled back to town, we don't
Yeah.
get to see Coram's reaction
Mhm.
to it, which
Oh.
I think is really important for you've established his characters and who they are and what they're doing, and you don't even give a moment for us to see him
Mhm.
happy maybe that she died or horrified or anything. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
you mentioned the Jeremy Brett when they give another moment to round off this story. But we don't get that in Doyle's.
Yeah.
Instead, we get Holmes revealing how he figured it out. There must have been, and then he gives everything, and then you can piece it together. There's, she must have gone into this room to kill her. And then, that I noticed everything. I noticed there were no books piled here. So I did the ashes and I figured it out. And then this food, that was the final clincher. I wanted to find out if, then because, well, then if she ate and then she would go back into things. So that's why we have to stay this long, you know. Um, the cigarette box, that's why I upset it to look at the tracings on the floor. And now, Hopkins, here we are at Charing Cross, and I congratulate you on having brought your case to a successful conclusion, which is funny.
Mhm.
And, that's a dig, right?
It is, it
Good
is.
job, Hopkins. You're going to headquarters. Watson and I are going to go to the Russian embassy to get to do the real interesting thing. You don't even get to do that with us. Um, a very abrupt ending,
Mhm.
almost as if I'm thinking Doyle's and he's finishing up and he's like, yeah, this is long enough.
Yeah. I hit my word count for the day. I'm good.
This
Yeah,
is long enough for the
maybe,
Strand
maybe.
story. I've hit everything. We're good. And I really think I think he does a disservice to what he has set up here and these characters. Now,
Mhm.
what I don't want is, studying Scarlet, like, let's have a whole section of their life, in Russia and being
Like a novel.
but we need some more to it.
Yeah.
I
Random
think at the
parts.
end.
Do we know what the manuscript looks like? Like, what did he like? Had he
It's
reached
exactly
the
this.
end?
It's exactly
It's
this.
exactly this.
No, but is it like in the middle of the page, or is it the end of the page? He just decided that this must like this is the last bit that we have.
Yeah, like there were pages missing. No, it actually it owes here it is. I'll share this. This is the uh Arthur Conan Doyle Encyclopedia website, and they have images of the thing. And this is the next to the last page. Can you see that in the middle there?
Uh-huh.
And then
Oh,
the last page,
Oh. Oh.
there it is. Like
Oh my gosh.
it could have gone
wow.
Three
on.
words.
Wow. I cannot believe him.
And there were
Wow.
several pages left in this booklet. So, yeah.
He was done with the story. He was like, this is
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
This
I
is
was
it.
so disappointed after I
Um,
really read it as an adult, as opposed to reading it when I was a teenager, right? Like you said, it was at the bottom of everybody's list. It's not on my list of rereads, and so I finally read it for the first time again as an adult. I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. And then you get to the end and she kills herself, and I'm sitting there going, well, what the hell did she do that for? She finally, she
Yep.
finally does the thing that she was going to do, and she fulfills her purpose, and Alexi is going to be set free, and she wasn't planning to turn, I mean, and then she kills herself. I mean, maybe she wouldn't have known that Holmes is the kind of guy who would have just said,
mm,
if you just kind of slip away in the night, I'm not going to say anything about it. And Hopkins, you're going to keep your mouth shut because I told you to, or some other kind of way of getting
Yeah.
around it. Um, it was an accident that she hurt him, right?
Oh, it was. I mean,
I mean, it was
yeah.
it was murder in the commission of burglary. Nowadays, we would that would be a problem. But and it is a problem. She killed someone. But
yeah.
I guess I wasn't given a good enough reason for me to feel that her suicide was absolutely
Yeah.
necessary for the story. I think it was just a, hey, let's be dramatic and have her poison herself and die on the floor. And then it's like I kind of joked with Maria earlier. I'm like, and then Holmes and Watson and Hopkins are like, peace. And they leave on the train and leave this dead body in Gorham's bedroom.
Like the local
just,
officer will take
just
care of
take
it. It's
off.
fine. It's fine. I mean,
It's fine. You can deal with
one
it. It's okay.
I feel like one good reason for her to do this, because she does it before she leaves, and I think that's the mistake, right?
Yeah.
Because she
Right.
only learns after that, actually, they're kind of respectful of her. But I think coming out of the gulag and
Mhm.
having been there for like 20 years, she does
Right.
not want to go back in.
Yeah. There's no
Okay.
way
Like
she's coming back.
whatever
Yeah.
whatever prison she would go back to, she will not survive that. So to me, it feels like she, in the moment that she killed him, she fled, she ended up at Coram's room, and he kind of hit her. That was still fine, but as soon as she knew that
Mhm.
they had figured out where she was, that for her was the moment she took the poison,
Mhm.
because she would not have wanted to go back. But that's not given the space, right? I mean, she doesn't mention this, or she doesn't like really talk about the trauma that she has. All she says
Right.
is like, Alexei needs to be freed, which makes her very noble and very sacrificial. But again, it puts her in the position of a woman sacrificing herself for
Right.
a man, which of course is how things should be. restore order and everything.
Read your sexology book and you'll learn
So
these things.
it feels very in line of, the good woman sacrificing herself for the good man,
Yeah.
and that obviously takes precedence. So it's kind of,
Oh, of course.
dissatisfying.
And I mean, I think on Doyle's part too, there's a whole naivety, at play here too.
Mm,
Like, you really think they're gonna free him at the,
yeah,
like, oh,
Yeah.
I
look, I
mean,
got proof that he's been in, like,
right.
I mean,
He's still a nihilist. I mean, yeah.
it'd be so hard to happen now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have to go through all kinds of, court for years now to free somebody
Yeah.
like that. Then I can just imagine no. Like, there's no such thing as appeal, I would imagine, from
Not
Right.
yet, not yet. The Court of
Not
Appeals
as
was only
czarist, these
established.
czarist courts.
No, no. I mean, the Court of Appeals was only established in England, like
Mhm.
what,
Yeah.
5 years after the story is written.
Yeah.
So it doesn't exist yet. And of course, the nihilists were listed as a terrorist organization, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's so whether you did anything wrong or not doesn't actually matter. I mean, it's kind of this very everyone in that group gets to hang, right? No matter what you
In
think.
several stories, we get a little coda at the end, and he
Hmm.
tells us what happened, and it's
Right.
usually because there is something like that. It matters to the story, like what would have happened to these people. And here, the only coda is we're going to the Russian embassy, which kind of says to me that, like, that seems a little hopeful that we're going to help this Alexei because Anna's what she did, and they could free her. But that's like we don't know. And what happens to Coram now? Granada gives us an answer, but I don't know. I just think that he probably went on.
Mhm.
I finished this book,
Yeah.
Probably.
Got away with it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. And it's also
Unfortunately.
weird. It's also weird just thinking about like Watson's initial introduction to the story, right? Where he says like this is so decisive, so important. I need to tell the story. And then this is the end we're getting.
Yeah.
Like, come on, Watson, just give us something else.
I mean, even Holmes says it's pretty simple. If it's instructive, it's a pretty simple case. And we're like, come on,
Yeah.
man.
So I guess Doyle must have been distracted while writing the story. I mean, on the one hand side, the forgetting Hopkins's name in the middle of it, and then just kind of ending on that note.
Mhm.
He probably was busy writing, one of his 3 historical novels that he's writing at the same time. So yes.
Well, he
Gotta pay
was
that light
doing,
bill.
he did a few Brigadier Gerard stories the year he was doing these too. I wonder and they were like, he loved doing those, and I'm sure
Mm,
if that was what was going on here. But he's and it's not even, I think sometimes it's not even Doyle was like, oh, I can't stand writing these, I wish I were writing something, because he's just writing other things all the time anyway, so
yeah,
he is
yeah.
that busy always. He's producing so much work all the time.
Mm.
But he had his say in this, and that was it. So I'm not even going to give it a good title. It's just a Golden Pump. There you go. Could have called it The Adventure of the Russian Nihilist. I mean, that would have been better, or, you know, so the missing, well, no, we get the missing, we just had,
The many smoked cigarettes.
yeah.
The
The
nicotine, the
eternal
adventure of the
cigarette.
nicotine poisoning.
Because we've 3 stories in a row where he seems to have kind of run out of titles. Uh,
Hmm.
Early on, stories are, Scandal in Bohemia, Redheaded League, Case of Identity, even when it's a particular thing about the story, it's so unusual that to call it the 5 Orange Pips makes it
Hmm.
unusual. Same thing with the Blue Carbuncle and Speckled Band. But and then the memoirs, the Gloria Scott Musgrave Ritual, he's hitting upon interesting words here that seem to, like, Greek interpreter, what's that?
Mhm.
And now this series where they start that way, Norwood Builder, Dancing Men, Solitary Cyclist. There's even more than one solitary cyclist in there. Uh, Priory School, Black Peter, and then it's, well, yeah, Six Napoleons is interesting sounding because it's an unusual thing, but then it's the 3 students, the Golden Pince-Nez, and the Missing Three-Quarter, and you're like, what? Did you run out of titles in your head? So, like, I don't even
Yeah.
care about giving it a good title at this point. So, but I do love the whole I like the investigation part of this story. The
Hmm.
whole
Hmm.
core of this story I think is really strong, and Holmes's, snarky attitude to
Yeah.
Hopkins is cool to watch. So I don't feel bad for Hopkins because you're a dumb cop. You don't know anything. Holmes is right.
But he draws good maps, so
He
that's
does.
something he's got going for him.
There you go. And there's the car. Oh, wait, they haven't been invented. Wait. Uh, well, thank you both. I thought that was lovely.
It's fun.
Sherlockians, thank you for joining us for episode 41 of Sherlock Monthly. I appreciate you guys, and you two as well, going on this biblio venture with us. I'd love to have you back again one day. And now I know that you've got all this Tolkien in you too, Maria. Well, there's some things that might happen there. We will return next month with our next story, The Adventure of the Missing Three-Quarter, title. But we will have great fun because the co-hosts on that show will be Erica Fair and Max McGee. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. Thank you to the sponsor of Sherlock Monthly, Lisa Washington, and thank you to Belanger Books, publishing all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Pawns, and occult detectives from the Victorian era to the 21st century. Explore the mysteries of 221B Baker Street, the horrors of Lovecraft's nightmares, and the wondrous worlds of H.G. Wells. Belanger Books has it all. You can visit them at belangerbooks.com. We couldn't do this show without the generous support of those patrons, and also you as a patron as well. You can support the Rosenbach through donation. Your support helps us create more programs like this and also care for our collections. You can also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out more at our website, rosenbach.org. Please like these videos. Please subscribe to our channel. That helps us, get more viewers in general when you do those kinds of things. Thank you all for watching this series. Thanks you all for returning for the new season, I should say. Jessica, Maria, thanks again. Everyone, I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library, where the game is always a book. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe if I can get this share right, let's see. Advanced video, and there's my credits. Beautiful. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Beautiful.